Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Jarrell Mason in another episode of Beyond the Album Cover, where you get inside the entertainment industry with those in the know and give people their flowers while they're here to be celebrated. With me right now, I have brothers from the Quad Cities of Davenport, Iowa. Shout out to Iowa and all the Cyclones and Hawkeye fans. You know, you know. So they've been on the scene for years with their debut album in 1993, Bam, released on A&M Records, produced by Eric, Fred Hammond, and other hosts, and they put out bomb albums such as Necessary Measures in 94, Focus in 98, From Now On in 2011, and they got a brand new project that they're about to hit you over the head with. Come by here. We're going to talk about that and more with my distinguished guests on Beyond the Album Cover, the brothers, Anson and Eric, better known as Dawkins and Dawkins. Welcome to Beyond the Album Cover, gentlemen.
What's up? What's up?
Thank you, man. Thank you. That intro was amazing.
Man,
Yes,
I appreciate you guys coming on, man. But I want to start off by saying Davenport, Iowa, the Quad Cities. Now, I don't really know too many Black people from Iowa besides you guys and Tracy Spencer, who's from Waterloo. So tell me about what it was like growing up in Iowa in the Midwest and also in the Pentecostal church. And any one of you guys can take this question.
We all know what it was like to grow up in. Listen, we were born in Davenport, but after my father got his first church, we moved to Columbia, Tennessee, just south of Nashville, like maybe 40 minutes south of Nashville. When we were being into were 4 and 5. We do have memories of Davenport, though. I remember walking to school in the snow in kindergarten, walking to school by ourselves. Like it was a different time back then. You won't see no two little 4 and 5-year-old kids walking themselves to school today. It just don't happen. But I have those type of memories from Davenport, and we have family there. So, but we were raised in Columbia, Tennessee, and then from there we moved to Ohio, which is where my parents are now. My father pastors a church there in Steubenville, and from there we kind of branched off. Anson went to school at Youngstown State University, so he was in Youngstown for a while. I moved to Detroit in 90 when we started working with Commission, and then from there I moved to Los Angeles in 96. So I've been in Los Angeles since 96. That's pretty much the majority of my life.
Okay. And you want to add
our
on, Anson?
grandmother was a pastor there in Illinois, Rock Island, Illinois. So we were connected there. I mean, we have some memories of being there and growing up, those young years. But most of our formative years were spent in Tennessee, between Tennessee and Ohio.
Okay, so now splitting time between the South and the Midwest, what were some of your musical influences growing up? Did you guys listen to whatever was on the radio? Was it primarily what was coming on your local gospel station, AM, FM, like Andre Crouch, James Cleveland, so on and so forth?
Well, we didn't listen to a lot of radio because my parents had records and 8-track tapes. So we listened to all those people you named on records. So we would be in the house and that's what would be spinning in the house. So of course, Andre Crouch was a huge influence. Andre Crouch and Rance Allen and the Hawkins singers. Those were like the ones that I think pretty much the beginning of the recipe that you now see as Dawkins and Dawkins. And when as we were getting older, we would we'd sneak and listen to a little R&B here and there. But yeah, our taste or palette for music was really formed by Rance Allen, the Hawkins singers, and Andre Crouch.
Mm-hmm. And now we mentioned those names and how they were able to blend R&B and gospel, and it was starting to get crossover play beyond just your gospel radio stations. And also too, if you listen to Aretha Franklin's Amazing Grace album, Reverend James Cleveland behind it. And can we talk about the impact of those artists you just named, how they were a part of that first wave of gospel artists that were able to blend gospel and R&B, where at the time it was on separate sides of the room and they didn't really meet in the middle too much?
Yeah. It's interesting because you had artists like Hawkins, Edwin Hawkins. The first had to be the first big gospel song that hit mainstream on Happy Day, and moving in those areas, and Vance Allen was doing. Yeah, I didn't even really realize it until he passed. There's some videos and stuff shared. And he was at these big festivals and stuff, with the artists. He was doing stuff like that. I mean, we knew he was amazing, but he was also, received well by, mainstream audience, and a lot of his uh, projects that started moving in that direction very strongly. I remember Eric will probably remember this as well, but I remember he had a project and called California Gold on it, and he had some other really cool songs on it, but they were mainstream songs straight up. And you had Andre Krauss that was doing stuff that his project, the one project that really put the envelope on that was some of the Hollywood scene on it, and Hollywood scene, and he had a song about abortion on there. I mean, it was just he was just doing some different things. So those artists doing that type of music gave us created a desire in us as well. As we kind of grew up and we look back, we like, okay, they were doing this kind of stuff. We want to do this as well. This is our desire to do music after growing up in the church and doing music at church, and then seeing, okay, the gospel has to get out. We don't want, we're not a group for the church. We believe that our music would, could be well suited for the church. People can, they can get with it, but really who we really want to hear and connect with our music are people who are outside of the church. Because we're not. I mean, we grew up in church, and as you can, as you're a PK and everything, you know how that flows. You can become insular, you can become insulated and incestual almost. You just everybody's just you just rubbing up against each other, and it's this whole inside church thing that nobody else gets. You're not relative outside of that, and I think that's what a lot of those artists ended up doing. They wanted to become more relevant to what was outside because they believed they had a great message. They believed they had good news, and they wanted to share it. It wasn't so they could be like secular artists. They felt like they had something that to offer, something that was beautiful, something that was wonderful and could change lives. So they stepped out of the comfort zone and stepped out of where people were going to be always giving them accolades, and sometimes it was going to be they were going to be ostracized. So it's not an easy thing, and we walked through it as well. And in some instances, we continue to walk through it.
Eric, do you have anything you want to add on what Anson stated?
He said pretty much what it was. We've often been labeled as trailblazers and trendsetters and pioneers, whatever you want to call it, and to be placed in that category, it's flattering, like, because that's the same thing they said about the Andre Crouches and the Rance Allens and the Hawkins singers and stuff like that. So for us, it just meant that we were doing exactly what we were supposed to be doing.
Definitely, indeed. So, earliest church memory, church solo. Did you guys do the solo thing before doing the duo in church, or was it always we're gonna be a duo?
The trio.
Yeah, we used to sing with my mom, so we always sang together, like
Yeah,
with my mom.
that's how I started.
Yeah.
We started out singing. I think one of our first songs was by a group out of Houston called BCNS, and the song was called um, uh, "He Has Never Failed Me Yet." Never failed me yet. So I remember I don't know what the future holds. I don't know about today. So it was a very cool song. It was like it was a trio that was doing it out of Houston. And then we had another group that we did more of their songs than anybody else's. It was a group called the Pentecostal Ambassadors, and they were from the Indianapolis area, and they were great, Pentecostal singers, and they were connected. We were all in the same organization and everything, and we loved what they did, so we did some of their material. Um, but those were, we would find songs like that were trios, and we would do it with my mom, and during services, my dad would go preach somewhere, and we would all go, the family would all go, and we would sing first, and then he would come up and preach. So it was a family affair.
Okay. And we're gonna go to the 313. Everybody knows that Detroit is Motown, but they got legendary. I repeat, legendary gospel heavyweights, the Winans, Commission, Clark Sisters, J.Moss. We mentioned Aretha. And Eric, you mentioned earlier about Fred Hammond. And as I stated at the top of the intro, he produced you guys' debut album, which came out in '93 on A&M. So how did it go about you all linking up with Fred Hammond? And can we talk about the impact of Commission?
Um, the the connection to Fred, we actually did a demo at the radio station that my father owned, and cut to a friend of ours that asked us to sing with her and play in her band. She was in Detroit, and so we drove to Detroit to do rehearsal with her, and we let her hear the demo, and she was like, "Oh, I need to let Fred hear this." So she took us to Fred's house and played the demo for Fred, and basically from just hearing the demo, heard the potential. Well, I stand on this today. That demo was horrible. It was awful. If I could hear it today, I'm sure I would probably be sick to my stomach. But he saw some potential in it, and he basically hired us on the spot, like to be part of Commission, part of the band. Rather, I played keys, Nancy played percussion, and we sang background with Commission. So we went on the road with them for a few years, and then at the same time started working on our debut project. But Commission's influence on us is it's probably paramount to anybody else's influence, because once we heard them, it stuck. It was like a light bulb went on. Like, that's what we want to do right there. Of course, we were influenced by a lot of people, but I think the the final the tipping point, was hearing Commission and realizing that that's something that we need to do.
Yeah, do you want to expound upon that, Anson?
I mean, I just feel like Commission was such a huge part of our development. We heard Commission. I mean, we heard the Winans first, of course, but it was like a progression. Andre Crowd, you got, the Ambassadors that we listened to, and then it was Winans, and then Commission came along, and we felt a greater connection with Commission for just because they had a song, they had a sound that was more relatable to us, um, and they were just different. They were different. It was like, we want to do this like, kind of emulate those guys, and we would do their songs. We had a couple groups when we started, and we would sing their songs. We did a couple Winer songs, but most of the songs were commission songs, and then we wrote 2 or 3 songs ourselves, and commission had the greatest influence on us, and they still do. If you hear some of our music now, you hear some things that are in our of our new project that have
Yeah, because I didn't get on the commission train till late, but when I listened to them, I'm like, if you didn't know that this was gospel, they were a clear-cut R&B group with their look and their vocals. And when I interviewed Mitchell, I told him groups like Shy, Jodeci, Boyz II Men, Intro, all stated their name as the biggest influence. Even if you go back and listen to I'm Still Waiting on Forever My Lady, Casey takes a lick from Running Back to You.
Yep, very much so. They were all very heavily influenced as we were, and any of the gospel groups that were out that came out during our time when we first came out, whether it be Men of Standard, whether it be there was New Vision, there was several different groups, but they were all, very much influenced by Commission. Commission had a signature sound, and they had a strong impact on all those R&B groups that were coming.
So what was that process like going to the studio, cutting that 93 debut album, which was released on A&M? And what was the feedback within gospel circles and outside of gospel circles on the debut?
Well, it was our first time in studio, in a real studio. Fred actually took us to a couple of different historic kind of studios in Detroit. We worked on the first record, and then I think the latter portion of the record was done in a studio that he built out in Southfield, Michigan. But it was cool. I mean, we were at home. Like we felt we fit right in that mold of like the whole studio life. Of course, Studio A, one of the famous studios out of Dearborn, Michigan, is where Commission cut a lot of their stuff. So even going in that studio, I think that's what was really the aha moment. Like, this is where Commission cuts their vocals and all their songs, and us being in the studio with them and cutting the songs, because they had their process. They would sing together, like they would all be in the booth at the same time singing. Like, so they would go over the harmonies and stuff before they would actually start recording, or kind of be learning on the spot. So it was really cool just being in the studio with them doing that. So by the time we got to us really doing the meat of our project, we had been in the studio with Commission, working on number 7. So it was really, really cool. Learned a lot.
Yeah, definitely a learning experience.
Yes, absolutely.
Now I mentioned the album came out in 93, so you still had the hints of the New Jack Swing sound. And for me, my first introduction to gospel music as a young kid, I remember being 5 or 6, rolling in my dad's Honda, and he had The Winans Return on cassette. And I saw on the back Teddy Riley, Bernard Bell, and I'm a huge Teddy Riley fan. And for me to hear that album and then to hear your guys' stuff, Commission, John P. Key, Company with Donald Lawrence, Angel, and How, produced by Stanley Brown, and how New Jack Swing really made a big impact in gospel. And that album, that debut, I feel was a great tone setter for you all. Come to Me was my favorite cut off the debut. So what led to the switch from A&M to CGI? Was it to where you felt the majors really necessarily didn't get how to promote and market gospel artists, and that small independent labels got it? Because I believe the only other gospel artist that was associated on A&M at that time, I'm sure Jimmy and Terry Lewis had a joint venture deal with A&M for Perspective, which was the label that Sounds of Blackness was on.
The interesting thing about that is that we were actually signed to Benson Records initially. Benson Records was a Christian label, one of the biggest Christian labels that was out at that particular time, which that was where Commission was, that was where Fred Hammond was. So what happened was that Benson, that was an inner company thing. We never had any kind of connection with CGI or A&M. That was a deal that the record company had with those particular companies. So we were just signed to Benson, and then we were, after we left Benson, then we moved over to Harmony Records for our 1998 project. But before that, like the Dawkins and Dawkins project and the Necessary Measures project, those were both on Benson, but Benson had some kind of deal with A&M and CGI, so that was just a different thing
Okay.
with the company.
Okay, so it's kind of like a distribution deal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, and let's talk about the '94 album. Going into the studio after the debut, knowing that, man, we got to come harder than we did before.
For us, I think it. Even today, we're different. We're different. We don't measure what we do now up against what we've done before.
Mm.
You know, and a lot of people try to come out and say, I gotta outdo the last record. The last record had these jams on it. I gotta do something better than that. We don't go into it with that mindset. We really go into the process with let's just make some great songs. Let's just make some great music that people can, you know, they can vibe to, or something that people can relate to, or some really stuff that feels good to us is what we do. And I think the fact that we love what we do, it comes across as outdoing the last record, the last project that we did. But it's really not anything other than, the natural progression of, being in the music industry. You have to evolve. You have to be able to grow as a musician, as a songwriter, as an arranger. You have to grow. And I think that each one of our projects, we've grown. And I think mostly because there's so much time in between, the majority of our projects. 93 and 94, that was the closest together any of the projects we ever done. And from then we started, kind of spacing it out. And whether it was due to circumstances or it was just that we felt like we didn't want to do anything until we were absolutely ready.
Mm-hmm. I understand the feeling. You definitely want to make sure that it's nice and good before it go out to the public. You remember how back in the day, Big Mama, Grandma be in the kitchen cooking that big Sunday dinner, and she smack you on the hand like, "No, boy, you can't have that. It's not ready yet." But when it's good and ready, it's good and ready, and it's long worth the wait. So let's talk about the '98 album, Focus, and how you guys linked up with J.Moss.
Well, we already knew Jay, so everybody that was working on that project, we were already friends with, we were already connected with. Jay, we actually ended up meeting Jay when we went to the UK with the Clark sisters. And Jay was singing background for the Clark sisters. So he was with them. So we were together for I probably almost a week when we were out in UK. And we were on these, we did this, had some bus things.
Tour buses.
Tour buses, and we'd be sitting. It was, I remember running in the back of the tour bus and having runoffs in the back of the tour bus with J.Moss and Eric, and who else was Dorinda, yep, and Pam was
Pam
there.
Taylor, yeah.
So Pam was there and all doing that stuff, and that's how we first met Jay. So we were already familiar with him and everything. We had heard some of his music already because this is like this industry stuff, before we actually met him, he had sent a demo to Fred because he was, and he had some material he was working on. So, and we had known about Jay from the Moss Brothers when they did their early stuff when they were younger. So, so when we were getting close to the end of the Focus project, and we got the opportunity to get, our manager was like, hey, we were like, we should get J.Moss to do something, and we ended up getting Jay. Um, he sent us some material, and we were like, okay, we want this song and we want that song, you know, and because we part of us was thinking, you know, Jay is gonna come out with his own project. We don't want Jay to have this particular child of God on his project coming out at the same time we got our project out. We want the hottest songs that you got. Give us those songs.
Mm,
So we ended up grabbing two of the songs, and Jay is just he's a good friend, and he's a super talented dude. He and Paul, and they create stuff. So it was just it was a great, great opportunity to work with them.
now you mentioned J.Moss and the Clark sisters. I believe J.Moss is related to the Clark sisters, correct?
Yep, because
Cousins.
Mhm. And the whole world got to see the impact of the Clark sisters on the music industry thanks to the Lifetime movie and how they influenced a generation of female R&B and gospel singers. So can we talk about real quickly their impact and also the impact of their mother, the late Dr. Maddie Moss Clark, who did not play?
We never got a chance to meet Dr. Clark, but because we were, me specifically, while I was in Detroit, I became really, really good friends with Karen and Dorinda. Like I would, I'd go to Karen's church sometimes. As a matter of fact, I was at their church, Emmanuel, the night that it's almost like that we all discovered that Kiki was gonna be a beast. Like the thing that her and Karen would do, where Karen would sing something, and then she'd have Kiara sing it. It was a like a midnight musical. It was like about 10 o'clock. We had a musical at their church, and they actually did that at the service, and we were all like blown away. Like, oh my gosh, Kiara's got it. She's got it. And she was about 10 then. And so we knew from that point she was about to be a powerhouse. So just that influence that the mother had that trickled all the way down, and you hear, in Kiara is one of our dear friends. So I've worked on a couple of her projects, you know, but just the Clark sisters being, another one of those groups that you put in that category of trailblazers, pioneers, trendsetters, because one of the premier female gospel um, groups of all time, period, point blank. And like you said, Maddie Moss didn't play, so I heard a lot of the stories, and they would talk about it, when we would hang out and stuff. So yeah, they've made a huge impact on the music industry, not just the gospel industry, the music industry, period. So yeah, we really value their friendship and their support as well, because they love us like we their little brothers. Because for them to even have us on the tour that they did over in London was huge. This was after our commission days. It was just me and Anson. It was Dawkins Dawkins. So being able to ride around with them in London was huge. And so yeah, we really appreciative of them for that.
Right, because the Clark sisters, like I stated, influenced countless female gospel R&B singers. I mean, Escape covered "Living in Vain." You can hear their influence on SWV. We can go down the list of all of the female R&B groups and solo artists that were influenced by them. And let's talk about the impact of the Winans family. We could go down the list of all of the members of the Winans who have blazed trails, continuing to blaze trails, and how they just stamped their claim and their legacy, not only in gospel, but in the music industry. Anybody can take it.
the Winans, of course, they are there's nobody like the Winans. So I mean, from the oldest to the youngest, I mean, they and cousins and sons and nephews and everybody uh, is able to sing and bring something to the table. And of course, they're the songs that they have have been such a huge influence on the industry, period, on other gospel artists, on other mainstream artists, from Marvin and Carvin's right, and Ronald with his choirs, and BB and CC, Angie and Debbie, uh, to, the Wine Space too, Daniel, Daniel, and then, Michael and Regina. I mean, it's just so so much, and it's almost, to me, it's almost overwhelming, almost overwhelming. The talent that's in that family and the sheer,
Even with Joy,
yeah, Joy,
she's an
yeah,
actress. Like, you
Deborah,
know,
yeah, Deborah Joy. I mean, her, her acting and singing with Juan, and so it's just like all this talent and all that God has blessed them with, um, to be and to know those guys. It's such a cool thing to say, to be able to say. We've been able to do shows with, when we were with Commission, we did shows with the Winans. And so, and even when I was in college, I got to, do some background singing for Vicky Winans. And that took me on some, Winans, they did a family, when they were doing a family tour, got to go out and do some stuff with them. And that's how I met Angie and Debbie. And, so they have been had such a great impact on music, period. They were virtually one of the, first families, of gospel music and
gospel royalty.
yeah, definitely gospel royalty.
Yeah, it's definitely a shame if you're not able to sing in that family. You get skipped the singing gene. You definitely want to get that. But I want to talk about really quickly. I'm curious to know from this standpoint, is there an intersection between artists from the urban gospel world and the CCM world? For those who don't know, CCM is like the top 40 version of gospel, where you have artists like Stephen Curtis Chapman, your Amy Grants, DC Talks, Toby Max. Are both worlds kind of separate and it don't really intermingle too much?
From our experience, they don't really intersect. Um, it's unfortunate, but it kind of is what it is. And unless you have a certain sound, you're not really going to get the attention of the CCM market. It's your hill songs, your worship stuff like that. That that genre of music can kind of mingle in there. Um, but yeah, it's like two different lanes,
Mm-hmm.
two different lanes.
And
So
you got a couple of people that have been able to kind of, get around there. Kirk gets around in there a little bit. You got Israel kind of got around a little bit in the circles. Um, and as well, like now you have,
Maverick City.
like a Maverick City, or like, uh, Jonathan Reynolds, that kind of deal. Um, but I mean, it's you have artists that can get. We haven't, it hasn't been our experience that uh, that we could move in those circles, in the teaching. So we've had a couple of different songs, and tried to get over there because of the songs that they wanted us to do, like on the Necessary Measures project. We had a song called "Carry Me Away" that was geared more towards that, uh, but nothing really, no real movement in that direction. But yeah, so they, unfortunately, they are kind of set.
Yeah, and it's a tricky lane to be in where you're able to straddle the line between both urban gospel, CCM, and then also we could put a third lane for mainstream, because I can remember being a middle schooler and seeing Stomp by Kurt Franklin on rotation on MTV, and
Yeah,
how he was like, whoa, this is a gospel artist on
yeah,
MTV, BET. Soul Train. So can we talk about that trickiness of being able to stay true to the gospel roots, but also at the same time have the mainstream exposure and have that mentality of be in the world, but not of it?
I think at the end of the day, I can only speak for us. I don't know what other people's um, motive or what their get down is, but we just do music that is authentic to us. And if it happens to cross, so be it. If it doesn't, we're so okay with that. Like, because too many times people they place these they place so much value on a certain sect or group that they become a part of. But I just feel like all of it is to further the kingdom. And you know, the separation is just it that if there was anything that annoyed me about the gospel music industry, it would be that. Because I feel like we're all we're all fishermen, period. We're not gonna all use the same bait. We're not gonna all go out in the same type of boat. Some people will go out in the dinghy. Some people will go out in a yacht. Some people will go out in the, fishing boat. Some people go out in a kayak. There's enough room in the ocean for everybody to catch as many fish as they want to catch.
Right. There's
So
many different ways to skin a cat.
So many different ways.
So many different ways to skin a cat. All right, so we're gonna fast forward a little bit. After the Focus album, you guys put out the 2011 project. From now on, and one thing I appreciate about your guys' albums, something that is missed today in music: interludes.
Funny that you should mention that, because we we actually didn't put one on this on these first two volumes, but we talked about it, and I know for the next ones we have some songs that we're considering doing as interludes. So we're gonna bring those back because we know people, they look for those interludes from us. So we're gonna do that again.
Please do, because those interludes, I'm like, man, they need to go ahead and make those full tracks, man. But for those that don't know interludes, go look up a 90s album. You'll find an interlude or a skit somewhere mixed in between. So let's talk about your brand new project, Come By Here, and how did that come about? And then also I want to talk about real quickly, what was it like working with Warren Baby Dub?
Warren is so interesting. We'll go from there and then we'll go back. Warren, in fact, no, I'm gonna talk about the album, and then I'll let Eric talk about Warren because he happens to be with Warren right now. The project Never Gets Old, volumes 1 and volume 2, which has our singles In My Feelings, and then the new single Come By Here. This was such a cool time for us. We've had time to kind of work on some music, and we compiled actually over 30 songs. And we wanted to, we were thinking about just throwing them all out there. And then after talking to a couple different people, it was just like, okay, we need to have a better plan with this. Let's try to do something else. So to release volumes and allow these particular volumes to have thematically to speak to different things and actually have some different, do this differently than other gospel artists have done. And prayerfully, it's going to work. We got a video out In My Feelings on YouTube. If you look on YouTube, and playing it on BET as well. And then we're getting ready to work on a video for Come By Here as well. So we've been, this new project with this new project series volumes is it's something that's been such a blessing to release and to share, because we feel like we have a gift and we want people to enjoy the gift, but we're not in charge of how they enjoy it, or if they do. We believe that the people that are going to get it, the people that love it, that they're the ones that are supposed to receive. So, but yeah, Warren is a great friend, and I'm gonna let Eric Eric, just kind of give an idea of, what it's like working with him.
Ward is a unicorn to me. Uh, he can do anything. He's one of my favorite producers, if not my favorite producer. Um, and working with him is it's like working with family. Warren is actually he's one of the reasons that I am in Los Angeles. I remember one year, this is back in '95. I was in a play, and I met Warren before '95. I met him like in '94 or something like that, like '93, '94. Um, and this particular play, when I was in Los Angeles, he was like, "Hey man, why don't you stay out?" This was the last week of the play for the holiday season, and I was about to go home. And he's like, "Yo, bro, why don't you just stay out here for a week? We could work on some music." And so I ended up extending my trip, and staying in Los Angeles with him. He didn't even tell his parents. This is a funny story. He didn't even tell his parents. He brought me home. Like, "Hey, mom, dad, this is my boy Eric Dawkins from he's singing the group Dawkins and Dawkins. Um, can you stay with us for a week?" Like, yo, this is great. And they just said, "Yeah, okay, cool." So during that time, Warren's been in a lot of he moves in a lot of different circles. This particular time, he was moving in the death row circle. Because he did stuff over there. He knew Tupac. He had done stuff on Tupac's records. You know, DJ Quick was like his mentor in the studio. So he took me to death row, and I was I ain't been scared too many times, but I was a little nervous. Two things: I didn't want to run into Suge. I don't know why, but at that time, like, I'm coming from Ohio, I'm green. But long story short, he got me a gig playing with the band for this Death Row Christmas party up in the Hollywood Hills. Like, so I'm like in the studio rehearsing with them, playing for people like Michelet, Danny Boy, some other cats. I met Tupac and Snoop at the studio. So it was just he embraced me. So from then we became like really, really close. I actually introduced him to Erica, his wife. So we've been close for years. So when it comes to us working together, it's like I said, it's like family. Like, he can call and ask me to do something, and I don't hesitate. And vice versa. Like, the stuff that he does for us, it ain't no, So that's gonna be, he ain't gonna send us no invoice or anything like that. I don't send him invoices. That's just how we work. So for him to lend his gift to us the way he does, it's amazing, because you don't find that too often.
Right.
And he's super, super talented. Like, I'm in Houston right now. We're working on the Walls Group as we speak. Uh, I like watching him work. So I think I'm always gonna have him doing something on our projects. I remember the last project, we were almost done, and I said, "Yeah, we're about done." And he's like, "No, you're not. You ain't done." It's like, "No, we are." It's like, "Hey man, you give me no shot." I was like, "Hey man, come on. I'm gonna give you." I gave him a time, and he sent me a track, and um, Best Man ended up he ended up doing Best Man on the last project. And even on this, I hadn't played keys on another one like him. I hadn't played keys on there with me. And for this project, same thing. Last minute, I was like, "Bro, I need something. Where you at? Project's almost done. Make me believe." Like, he always delivers. As busy as he is, he always comes through for me. Like, he's 3 songs on Kanye's new record right now. So that tells you how busy he is. You never know where it's gonna come out that he's been on. But Warren is one of my favorite people. I know that was a lot, but that's the only way I can talk about Warren.
Right. And you mentioned how it's rare to find a real person in the business, because you can find a lot of people who are wolves in sheep's clothing, smile in your face, stab you in the back, say, "I'm going to do this for you." 3 months later, still ain't happening. So I recommend anybody that's trying to get into this business, Don't lose yourself in the business, because if you do, it'll chew you up, spit you out. Try to stay as centered as possible.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Stay as centered as possible. But I want to get you guys out of here on this question. So, where do you guys see the direction of the current state of gospel music with a lot of the young artists, like you mentioned, Jonathan McReynolds, you got Kier, you have Lecrae, you have Melvin Crispell the third, who won Sunday Best a couple of seasons back, and just the new crop of young gospel artists that's coming in and doing the work of the Lord and reaching a younger audience. Because I saw recently a video on YouTube. It was Tori Kelly, Justin Bieber, and this other male singer whose name escapes me at the moment. But just to see an arena full of young people all saying, you know, I love God, I'm not ashamed, and just being sold out for Jesus. For me, it was a welcome sight.
Yeah.
Chandler Moore is who you're thinking about.
Thank you.
Yeah. I think that's super. It's super important for artists to have to influence where they can, to bring influence where they can. I think, you know, Chandler Moore, you know, Tori, Justin, you know, those guys getting into Christian music, gospel music, I think is a great thing. Jonathan and Doe and some John Houston, you know, some great artists that are out, that are making some great music and making some waves. And I think you know, it's a very interesting place, because you have a lot of music that is in the mainstream that's coming out that honestly is, you know, it's a little, you know, it's there are a lot of things that are sounding just alike. They're sounding the same, and they're not making any huge impact as far as changes are concerned, or bringing any innovation. And then you have some gospel artists that are coming out, that are stepping up and doing some really cool things. So I think there is going nowhere but up. You know, there's a big upside to this, and I'm glad that we get to be a part, and we want to also be, you know, be able to mentor some of these guys as well, that are coming up, and just be a part of the whole, continue to be a part of the whole gospel rhythm and praise movement that is happening now.
Eric, you want to expound upon what your brother said, or is that it?
Yeah, he pretty much said it.
Pretty much said it all. Clean, short, sweet, to the point. Now, any shout outs you guys want to give before we conclude this interview? Plug your social medias. And I'm also putting out an APB. Warren Baby Dub, Stanley Brown, J.Moss. You guys got an open invitation to come on Beyond the Album Cover. I mean, my nickname was J.Moss. Come on, J.Moss, I'm calling you out. Baby Dub, calling you out. If you guys want to come on, you guys got an open invite. So shout out, you guys want to give, plug your socials.
E. Dawkins, A. Dawk, Real Dawkins and Dawkins. Same thing on Twitter as far as A. Dawk and at E. Dawkins. And D&D Music, D, the letter N, D Music on Twitter. Facebook is Eric Dawkins and Anson Dawkins, and there's a Dawkins and Dawkins Facebook page as well. And our email address, dawkinsanddawkins@gmail.com. If you just want to reach out to us, we do respond.
Yeah, follow us and subscribe to us on YouTube as well. You know,
yes.
Follow our music and what's going to be happening. Got lots of cool stuff that's going to be coming up for the rest of the year. So keep looking out for it. We love getting the opportunity to share our music, and also to be in settings like this. And great to meet you, Jarrell. Appreciate what you're doing.
Yeah, no problem. I appreciate you guys coming on. Thank you to Benita for setting this up. And you can catch this interview on all streaming platforms and on my YouTube channel. Beyond the Album Cover is all over on Facebook, YouTube, all your socials. So follow me there. Ladies and gentlemen, Dawkins and Dawkins, Rhythm and Praise. Check them out. Thank you guys for coming on to Beyond the Album Cover.
Thank you.
Our pleasure, bro.
Yes, sir.